It's week 2 for the PGA Tour. Actually, it's week 2 for the show. Week 3 for the PGA Tour for 2023. And that means we're going to be previewing the American Express, formerly known as the Bob Hope Classic and a bunch of other names. How's it going, Jared? Good talking to you again.
It's going. We had a couple guys in the mix on Sunday last week. Didn't deliver, but that's what we're trying to do. Get those live bullets on Sunday, and then eventually they'll come through for us if we get enough of them.
Absolutely, yes. Our 2 long shots. We're right there in the middle of it. Chris Kirk and David Lipsky. Unfortunately, look, there were a lot of players, including Hayden Buckley, that just did not have the experience, especially Lipsky and Buckley, of closing tournaments, things of that nature. And you could tell. I mean, Buckley just didn't have much, kind of choked away one of those putts late. I forget which hole that was. That was like, what, 15th or something like that, 14th? And
yeah, 15 or 16.
It came back like right away, birdied, but yeah, at the 18th, you can't not birdie the 18th. I mean, that's like the easiest hole on the entire golf course. You should be on the green putting for an eagle, let alone having to settle for a par, which is what lost it for him.
Yeah, and of course, Siwoo is the one guy in the mix that has won PGA tournaments, quite a few now. I didn't consider Siwoo. I was too stuck on the trend of guys who had played the Century winning the Sony, and that trend did not hold. That's why I never considered Siwoo. But he's always a guy that should be on our radar. He's such a volatile player. He'll miss a ton of cuts, but like he wins because he has these spike weeks. So he's definitely a guy when he's at the odds he was. I think he was like 45 or 50 to 1. He's always a good guy to consider.
Yeah, but the problem with Siwoo though is that after he won the Players, there was was that just a hit and miss kind of deal, or is this guy ready to turn things up? And he just never did, really. If you look at it, he won this event back in 2021, and then he won last week, and that's it since the Players. So now, does that mean that maybe, I don't know, maybe he's ready to have finally his breakthrough season? He's got the talent, we know that. But then again, he did already win the American Express at one point. That didn't follow up much. And this is also why we do talk about sometimes players, you want to keep an eye on them, like we talked about last week, and we'll continue to talk about during the season, players that just tend to play better at a certain time of year or at a certain climate or a certain region of the country. So the fact that he had won at the American Express, maybe not too big of a surprise that he also won at Sony Open.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just think, again, he's just such a streaky player that there's kind of like no pattern or rhyme or reason to when he pops for a win. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. To me, like it did, last week. I didn't see it coming. There's really nothing you can point to in his numbers that said he was going to win.
And that's going to happen, I'd say, 25% of the time this season.
Sure. Oh yeah, it's golf.
Yeah, we're just going to go. The trends don't work. The player is not in any particular form. I mean, there's going to be probably, I'd say, 5 winners this season, unfortunately, that we're just going to go, well, there's nothing we can do about that because the golfer had like 6 straight missed cuts coming into an event or had never made the cut at an event. And that's why you have to wipe out a certain percentage that you're just not going to get, which is why in our one and done contest, it's important to note that even if you don't win, yes, very important to try to finish in the top 10 or the top 5 based on the revenue and so forth. But still, it's and look, there were a number. I don't know how many exactly picked Siwoo, but when you have as many contestants as we do, that's just inevitable.
I think there were 19 people that picked Siwoo, and I don't remember how many people are in the one we're in. I think 5,000 people. I want to say it is.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, most people didn't do well in one and done last week. So if you missed the cut or if you didn't come in the top 20 or whatever, I wouldn't worry too much. It was a tough week for sure.
Well, Tom Kim missed the cut. Corey Connors missed the cut. Not Corey Connors. Sung Jae missed the cut.
Yep.
So those are the top 2 players, odds wise, and they both they didn't even make the cut at an easy golf. Now look, I don't know even though the scoring got to a pretty decent point, it really wasn't very easy. It appeared, and it wasn't like there were any weird conditions
Yeah.
going on. I'm surprised that the scoring was actually not as low as we expected it to be.
I'm not sure how it finished up, but I saw on Thursday that the two par fives, 9 and 18, were playing like 120 under par, but the rest of the course was like 60 over par.
Wow.
So the threes and fours were playing tough. That was on Thursday. I'm not sure how it finished up.
Oh
But
yeah, sure. One day,
that course
sure.
is really all about sort of treading water on the par threes and fours, and then capitalizing on those two par fives.
Yeah. So speaking of the one and done, this is a week where it is going to be very hard to decide which way to go, because we look at the trends of this event, and these are some really tricky trends, especially the fact that you've had. I mean, the rankings we're going to get into in just a bit. But what was the one that you found out as far as the odds of the winners recently?
Yeah, 3 of the last 4 winners of the AMEX were 200 to 1 or higher, and the other winner was 66 to 1.
That's crazy.
So it's definitely a tournament for long shots.
Yes, and just getting into that itself, I'm going to get the Sony Open up here in just a minute, but the rankings. So you would think, of course, with the rankings with the American Express, based on those numbers, 200 to 1 and so forth, would be equally as bad, and they are. The last 16 winners at the American Express had an average world ranking of 162.5 before winning here. The low was 417 from Adam Long in 2019. And when Adam Long won in 2019, he also was making his first appearance at this event, and it was his first PGA win. So he broke a couple of barriers, but he also went down the line of, this is just a very difficult event, which means out of all of the events that we're going to pick this year, and that includes one and done, if you're going to roll the dice a little bit and try to go for someone a little bit outside like your top 20 players, this would be one of the events to do it.
Yeah. For sure. It's another event that has a small prize pool. I think it's very similar to last week, maybe a little bit higher, but still, definitely in the bottom third, I think, of the entire season. And the one thing I would say about the long shot thing is the field here is usually weak, but that's not the case this year. For whatever reason, there are, 5 or 6 of the, elite high-end players here in this tournament. So that makes it tougher too. I mean, are we going to get a long shot winner when we do have these higher end guys in the field this year when they, in past years haven't been here?
Yeah, that's a good point. But also, maybe that's just also because of the fact that we're just getting better players too. There's just a deeper field of talent.
Sure.
And maybe this is the new norm, and that'd be great. That'd be great if because there's always several events during the season where you just go, oh man, it's unwatchable. Also, the last 14 first-time winners of the AMEX played in either the Century or the Sony Open.
Yeah.
It's a little bit similar to what we talked about last week that did not work, which was the winner come from the Century. This event, the last 14 have come from either the Century or the Sony. So that's 14 consecutive. You also have 20 of the last 21 winners, including the last 10, only played in one prior same year event. So now what that's saying is if you play them both, for whatever reason, just luck, the only player to play both in the last 21 and win this event was Mark Wilson in 2012. He played the Century, and then he played the Sony, and then he played here and won it. So take that maybe as luck. But I also think this is important, though, in what that one may be luck, but still going with someone that played in the Century or the Sony, because once again, if you haven't, then that means you have not played a pro event in over 2 months. Again, you're going up against guys who just played the last week or two and got the rust out of themselves. So I think it just makes sense. That's all.
It does, yeah. Definitely a rust factor, I think, if you didn't play one of the 2 Hawaii events. So I'm definitely factoring that in, although I'm not limiting myself to only guys that have played in one of the 2 Hawaii events. A couple other things we should mention about this tournament that makes it unique. It's a 3-course rotation the first 3 days, 3 different courses. That means the cut won't come until after round 3. And then the other thing is it's a pro-am, which we see at a few other spots. I know Pebble Beach does the pro-am.
So by the way, did they not play the pro-am last year or the year before? Because I know they canceled it one year recently.
Did they cancel it for COVID?
I don't know, but it was one of the last 2 years. I just don't know which one it was.
Yeah, so,
makes sense. It would be COVID, of course.
Yeah, just generally when they do these pro-ams, they set the course up easier. The greens are slower, the pins are easier. So that's one reason this turns into an event where I think most of the recent winners of this event have been 20 under or better. So it's another easy course.
The last 15 winning scores have been 20 under or lower. So
this is the event that John Rahm, I think it was last year, right? He called it an effing putting contest as he stormed off the green.
Really? I don't remember that one.
Wow. That's how these types of events go. It's who gets hot with the putter and makes their birdies, because everyone's going to be hitting fairways, everyone's going to be hitting greens. It's just who can bang in those 10 to 15 foot birdie putts.
Yeah, and before we break this down again, the bottom line with the one and done is I'm thinking, I might have to do like a Siwoo Kim type. I'm gonna have to do with somebody that is not, because I'm not. It's just based on the earnings. There's no way I'm touching Rahm, Scheffler, Cantlay in this event, even though they're obviously the 3 best players here. And I could say pretty much the same thing with some of the other guys, because Finau and Schauffele don't have a great history here, so forget those guys. And then Kim's coming off a miscut, Im's coming off a miscut, and Zalatoris, but you want to save him because you know how good he could be in the majors.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I would even start off at like 28 to 1-ish, in that area, 28, 30 to 1 and to like 60 to 1 and pick a player there. So
yeah. Now again, I don't think you want to go too far down the board. You don't want to get too crazy, because again, we have 30 or 35 events, so you don't need to use these guys way down the board. I'm with you though. I don't want to use one of the elites because of the prize pool being so low here, and because again, this tournament just is more random because of how it's set up and the fact that it is so easy. The one higher end guy I'm considering, and I haven't decided who I'm using for one and done yet, but the one high end guy I'm considering is Tom Kim. I just wonder if people are going to be off him after he missed the cut last week. You look at the numbers last week; he couldn't make a putt. It was a horrible putting performance. Everything else was in line. The off the tee approach, all that was solid. So just one of those weeks where he couldn't get anything to drop. I think this course does set up well for him. It is a shorter course, which I think is what you want with Tom Kim. So I'm considering using him. Otherwise, though, I'm with you. Then I'm going to go down the board into that 30 to 50 to 1 range.
Yeah, let me see here. After miscuts for Kim, I'll go to let's just do his most recent. He hadn't missed a cut since the PGA Championship. And he came back with a 5th, but that was on the Asian Tour. And that was, okay. And then before that, he missed the cut in Qatar. Came back and then finished 2nd in Asia. And, so he has not yet missed a cut on the PGA Tour for us to know how he would respond. Oh, here last year. He missed the cut 2 years ago. He missed the cut at the American Express, this very event, and followed it up with a 15th, but that was 5 weeks later at the Puerto Rico Open. And I think that's also very important for me statistically, and I'm not saying necessarily for one and done, but just overall, I think it's important to check players and see how they respond to miscuts. Sometimes you look at a player, or even John Rahm. Now, this is just one that you think would eventually break at some point, but he's never won consecutive PGA Tour events ever. So there are little tiny historical trends that you have to look at, and this is one of them. Is how does a player react after a miscut? But Kim's probably just too early in his career to really pose too much judgment.
For sure, and again, he'd be like an ownership play for me. When I say that, I mean I just think. First of all, a lot of people used him last week, so they don't have him anymore. And then second of all, I think people aren't going to go to him because he did miss the cut last week. So
that's a good point. That's a good one.
If I can get Tom Kim at 3% owned in this one and done, I think he might make sense.
Well, no, I mean let's see. because Kim, did Kim finish runner up here? Am I looking at someone else?
Tom Kim, I think the only time he played here was when he missed the cut.
Oh, that was it? Okay, what do I got here
yeah.
for then? What is that thing that I got there for? I wonder why I did that. I'll have to check and see why I have that under him. I get my golf stats, past performances up. Don't forget, check out the link on the description of the show and use our code to order a subscription of golfstats.com. It's the one I use. Jared uses another site. So as soon as he gets permission to get credit for that, we'll promote them. So you have only Kim playing here once?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what the hell I was, where I got, or maybe it was just a slip of my, because it doesn't even make sense why he would finish second here a few years ago when nobody heard of him. Okay, so then there you go. 22-1. He's only played here once, and he missed the cut, and he's coming off a missed cut. So those are a couple of, but that's probably also a reason why nobody's going to take him.
Exactly.
So not a bad idea. All right. And some of the one and dones that I was considering, the only top guy that I would consider, but I'm not going to do it, would be Cantlay. If I was going to pick one of the three, but I'm not doing it. But I would actually think of like Montgomery. If I'm going to take Montgomery, this is a good week to do it. Brian Harman. If I'm taking Harman, if I'm taking Hoagie, if I'm taking Cameron Davis, Adam Hadwin, and Andrew Putnam. Those are all guys that I'm seriously considering taking. I'll probably take one of those guys. I was thinking even of Cameron Young, but I'm like, nah, I'm using him for a big event. So it's just going to be tricky to take one of these players.
It is.
But
it is.
I like your idea of taking Kim. All right. Let's break down the Amex. And John Rahm is the favorite at 6-1. He's got 3 wins in his last 5. He has a win here in 4 appearances. I mentioned before, but he's never won consecutive PGA Tour events in his career. He has won consecutive events. I believe that was in Europe. But just keep that. But maybe, again, we would expect him to break that. But can he win 4 and 6? That's a big ask, which is the reason, especially at 6-1, when I can get double the price on Scheffler or Cantlay, why I decided that if I'm going to take a guy, like a top guy, I'm not going to take Rahm.
Yeah, I'm not betting any golfer at 6.5 to 1 unless it's prime Tiger Woods. And again, especially at this course, I think Rahm is less likely to win here than he is at, say Torrey Pines, where his elite skill set matters more at a course like that. I just think, again, it's more random here. I think he has less of an advantage. So no consideration of betting Rahm for me.
Okay. Then you got Scheffler and Cantlay at 11-1. Scheffler has been here the last 3 years. He did finish 3rd, his first appearance. The last 4 events, he's been in the top 10 in all 4. What I find interesting is, and I'm not sure many people would guess this, Scotty Scheffler has not won an event since the Masters. So that was the only reason I was actually, if I was picking one of the 3, I was, let's get a win under our belt. Let's just go low. But I just decided to go with Cantlay because he's been a little bit more consistent, not only recently, but also at this event. He's got 3 straight. I don't care about the miscut in 2013. He's got 3 top 10s in his last 4 years, including a runner-up a couple of years ago. So I like Cantlay, and that's why he's my top pick this week. I just wanted to take at least one of those 3 guys.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Cantlay's also played well at AT&T, Pebble Beach, which is another Pro-Am, which I think there's something to that.
I agree.
Pro-Am rounds, you're playing with an amateur. The rounds are longer. It's kind of a different mindset.
You have to have patience.
I think that matters.
Yes.
Has to have patience.
John Rahm doesn't have much patience, but he did win here before. So
yeah.
Who would you take out of the 3, Scheffler or Cantlay? Because you said you wouldn't take anyone at 6-1. So
yeah, Cantlay would be my pick among those top 3 guys for sure.
Okay. Finau 12-1, 2 top 15s in 5 attempts, a 4th in 21. That was just a couple years ago, but he's not particularly on form.
He's not. I don't love the course for him. I think his distance off the tee matters less here. He can win, but again, I don't think it's a great spot for Finau.
Yeah, he's been a little bit quiet actually. He is 12th in the world right now. Look, he had the win in Houston to and he had the really solid end of the not end but kind of summer. He had that run. Winning at Houston is nice, but it's a different type of year.
Mm-hmm.
He's a solid player, but again, I don't know. Can he win like you said? Yes, but I think
Interesting now that he's being grouped, close to the Cantlay
you're right.
Scheffler range,
Yeah.
where a year ago at this time he probably would have been in that 20 to 25 range here.
Well, interestingly enough, last year, this was at this time of year he got up to a really slow start. He didn't do anything, nothing, until he had the runner up out of nowhere in Mexico when he almost caught John Rahm, then disappeared again until the Charles Schwab Challenge. Then he got his game going through the end of the year with the three wins: the 3M Open, the Rocket Mortgage, and the Houston Open. So he's got that, and that's probably why he's 12-1 right now, I would guess. Schauffele's at 16-1, but he's missed the cut here twice. That was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I don't know why he withdrew from the Century, and that's always a warning signal.
Yeah, he had a back issue that we knew about coming into the tournament. He said he was fine. Wasn't fine, obviously, and he's saying he's fine again this week. But I no chance I would risk it.
Absolutely.
Xander, that the back injury isn't priced in. If he was 25-1, I might give him a look, but not at 16.
Zalatoris, Kim, and Im are 22-1. We talked about Kim. Miscut a couple of years ago, miscut last week. Zalatoris, 6th here last year in his first appearance, coming off an 11th a couple of weeks ago at the Century. So the whole injury deal with Zalatoris, it's only been an event, but so far so good. But if you were going to take 1 out of 3 of these players this week as part of our picks, well, which way would you go? Im's been very solid here, 4 top 15s.
Yeah, he has been. I don't like how Sungjae played last week at the Sony Open, lost strokes off the tee and on approach. So that's worrisome. So he'd be the first guy out for me. As much as I love Willie Z, but I think Tom Kim would be my lean among these 3. The injury stuff with Willie Z is still in the back of my mind. But then again, I like him at tougher courses where 12 under is the winning score, not these like Rahm said, putting contests where I don't want Zalatoris in a putting contest.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea. Okay, so next up is Burns and Young at 28-1. Burns hasn't really been on top of his game.
Yep.
And he didn't even play all that well at the Century. He does have 1 top 10 and 3 appearances here. Young was 40th last year at 10 under par. He does seem to be getting going again. He was quiet for a little while towards the end of the last season, but then he's picked it up at his last 2 events. I would consider him. I didn't take him, but he'd be definitely one of those guys I could see, especially because he would fit the bar of being a player. Like if you want to take a look at some of the other trends, and this is what you're going to get at long shots. 5 of the last 14 first-time winners here made this event their maiden PGA Tour victory. And that's something that comes with long shots and things of that nature. Not that Young's a long shot, but keep in mind when Rahm won this event, it was only his 2nd PGA Tour win. So he did it when he was still kind of a future kind of player.
Yeah, I would consider both these guys. I didn't take either of them either, but I think it's a good number on both guys. My issue with Cam Young is, again, I think his distance off the tee is negated here. I think you're going to see him, taking 3-wood off a lot of these tees. So it's not a great course for him. But again, at the number, I think he's interesting. And then Burns was horrible at the Century. You look at the ball striking stuff off the tee and approach was really bad, which is worrisome. He's just a guy that wins, though. He won twice last year. He won twice in 2021. And I just like that ability. Again, he's a guy where Burns is in the mix on Sunday. I like his chances to get it done. So I do think 28-1 is not a bad number on Burns.
Okay, next up is Brian Harman, and we talked. We went in depth on Harman last week,
Yeah.
based on the fact that he's like in a nice little zone, and he didn't have a bad week. 32nd, it's okay, nothing wrong with that. So right now, if you look at it, you combine the fact that he's playing well and his last two events on this golf course were third and eighth.
Yep.
And he's got 6 top 25s in his last 7 on this golf course with 3 top 10s and 2 top 5s. So the combination of he's playing really well and he plays well on this golf course and he hasn't won in a while. It's been since 2017 since Brian Harman's won, which is why I would consider him even in my one and done.
Yeah, I'd rather use Harman as a one and done than bet him. I think the course history is definitely baked into those odds. I mean, to me, he's priced way too close to Cameron Young and Sam Burns, who I just think are much better players. The thing with Harman too, I wonder if he sort of missed his chance to win in the fall because, like you said, the results have been okay the past 2 weeks in Hawaii, but he lost strokes on approach in both of those events where, he had been hot with the irons prior to that. So I just wonder again if his hot streak's kind of over. He's going to be, trending downward now.
By the way, if you could look on the top screen, we have the ticker, and the ticker there is based on a couple of stats that you came up with this week. The obvious one is at the scoring at this event. The other one is top 10 opportunities gained over the last 12 months. Why did you choose that one?
Yeah, so that's a fantasy national stat that I like. And opportunities gained is when a player has a birdie putt inside 15 feet. That's how they define it. So it's just, which guys are giving themselves the most chances to make birdies, which again, I think is important on this course because you're going to have to go, 20, 25 under to win it.
Okay. Now we have a couple of 35 to 1s. We have Montgomery and Wise, your boy Wise. Now, Montgomery is, again, another player that if you're going to take Montgomery, not that you would necessarily have to this season in a one-and-done scenario, but if you're going to take him, this was even a week that I was considering him in my picks. I just didn't get him in there because of the fact that, like you did, you have to throw a bunch of long shots this week if you're ever going to throw long shots in. But he was right there because he's trending in the right direction. Again, he's never won a PGA Tour event, and here's one too. Adam Long, Johnny Vegas, and Charlie Hoffman not only made the AMEX their maiden PGA win, but they did it on their first appearance. Something that Montgomery would do if he were to win this week. Wise, meanwhile, has missed his last 3 cuts here. Yep. Which just doesn't make any sense why you'd want to take him this week.
Yeah, I'll bet Aaron Wise plenty this season, but just the fact that he's missed his last 3 cuts here, I'm gonna stay off him this week, especially at that number.
Okay, now let's get to 40 to 1. We've got Hoagie at 40 to 1. A solid choice if you want to take him, and you definitely did. Not only did you take him, you made him your top choice. He was runner-up here last year, 6th 3 years ago. Last week was just okay, top 45, but don't forget he had a really strong showing at the Century a few weeks ago, finishing 3rd. So why did you make him your top choice at 35 to 1?
Yeah, well, the stats love Tom Hoagie here. We talked about that opportunities gained metric that we looked at. He is first in this field in opportunities gained over the last 2 years, over the last 12 months, over the last 6 months. So he is generating birdie opportunities. He's one of the best approach players in this field. He's second in strokes gained approach over the last 2 years. Plus, what I like is Hoagie won the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am last year. So he obviously doesn't mind playing with these amateurs.
And again, he could be a really good pick and one and done this week. I hit him last year. And
so did I.
You did? Yeah. Yes. So I actually thought that he had it in him to be a more consistent player. Mm-hmm. I was surprised that he kind of went away and went back to just being okay. It just appeared to me that he was on the verge of being a little bit more consistent. But he is one of these players, though, that just if you get to going, then you're feeling real good about his chances. So if he gets off to a good start, watch out. 35 to 1, not bad. And again, I think a very solid one and done candidate this week. Okay. Next up, we have Cam Davis at 50 to 1. and this happens to be your second choice. Why not? Again, a very solid player that you might want to consider for a one and done, coming off a third here a couple of years ago. He's got 3 top 30s in 3 appearances. He had a top 35 last week. And he has 1 PGA win, which goes just about what you want, because a lot of guys here in the trends have either won their first or second PGA Tour event. So what about Cam Davis? Why is he your second choice?
Yeah, so 10th in our event history here over the last 5 years. So you like that. Cam Davis came 32nd last week at the Century. He was actually, or at the Sony, he was actually 10th in that field in strokes gained tee to green. He had his worst putting performance since November 2021.
Wow.
Long term, he's a positive putter. So that to me is just a one-off blip thing. I think if the ball striking stays at the level it was at last week and he rounds back into form at putting, which I think he will, I think he has a really good shot here. Davis is 7th in opportunities gained over the last 2 years, 3rd over the last 6 months. So another guy who can make a lot of birdies.
Do we? I don't remember, but do you recall Cam Davis's past performances at Sony? Whether it was a good golf course for him?
I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, because that's something to consider.
Yeah, so 32nd last week, 27th the year prior, 31st the year before that, and then 9th in 2020.
So he is pretty similar.
He's lost strokes putting 4 of the 5 times he's played there. So for whatever reason, he just doesn't like those greens.
There you go. Perfect. It's just what you want to hear. So again, a very solid candidate to go for it this week with. 55-1, you got Thigala, Day, and Hadwin. And again, these odds have changed over the last 24 hours. So if they're off by a little bit, they're off. But Hadwin, he's the one that you have as your third choice, and I was very close to putting him in my picks as well. I think he's definitely somebody that you got to go with because he's been really good here. 6 top 35s out of 7, 4 top 10s, 3 top 5s, and 2 runner-ups. He's cooled off just a little bit the last couple of years here, so it hasn't been his best. But the one thing that I'm just a little bit concerned with is the fact that he hasn't played since mid-November.
Yeah, that's a concern. What I like, though, is that he had a good fall swing. So I hate being the guy who just leans on course history and bets, Hadwin because of that. But for me, it's the course history plus the fact that he popped a couple times in the fall. He was 10th at the Shriners. He was 7th at the Houston Open. And in those events, he gained 5.5 and then 7.6 shots on approach. So he had the irons working. So, yeah, there's some risk here, the fact that we haven't seen him since the fall. But I like the fact that he was playing well. And, again, he obviously likes it here.
With the 2 runner-ups, you would have to think that if there's an event that Adam Hadwin is going to win again, because I forget where his first win. He only has 1 win, I believe, right? I forget where Adam Hadwin won.
Sounds right.
It's
been a while, right?
It has been a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
Valspar in 2017.
Okay, so there you go. All right. So, yeah, Hadwin, also another interesting candidate if you're going to go for it this week. Thigala played here last year, solid 33rd, 11 under par. Didn't play particularly well at the Century, but was second at the RSM before that. He's just a guy that we know he's going to win. When is it going to be? The odds are good, but why not consider him this week?
Yeah, I did consider him. I like the number on him. I'm a little surprised he's not, down in the 30s or 40s even. I think it's a good spot for him. He's a guy I like in these lower scoring events. I think he can make a lot of birdies. He's a volatile player. He could miss the cut this week, but he also has the upside to win. So I think it's a good bet. Yeah,
whenever the time comes, if you do play him on a one and done, you're going to be very nervous because, like you said, he could, it could go really bad, or you could be there and you'd be like, "Hey, man, I took him and no one else did." All right, Jason Day is also in this group. I'll be interested to see if he gets off to a good start. I think he's going to have a nice season, but he's got to stay healthy. Okay, Wyndham Clark at Putnam are right around 60-1 ish. I think Putnam's moved up a little bit. Clark is trending in the right direction, but hasn't played since mid-November. And he did finish 13th here last year, which is his best finish here. So he's interesting in that regard. But Putnam's the real deal here. It's this reason why he's my second choice. Again, I'm going to consider him on my one and done. I just think that there is a chance that he could have his breakthrough year. I think
Hmm.
it's all trending in that direction. If it's going to happen, he's going to have to play well this week and maybe even win. He has 5 top 35s and 6 attempts here, 1 top 10. Hasn't won since 2018. But what I did notice is that he's got 3 pro wins, and every time he's always won when he's been trending in the right direction. He's not one of these guys that'll miss a cut and win or have a bad couple of weeks and win. He's usually, when he plays well, he wins, or that's when he wins. He's only got 1 win. That was Barracuda. So this would be his second PGA Tour win. And in his last 4 events, trending the way you want to see it, including 4th last week. He was runner-up in October at the Zozo not too long ago, just several months back. And this is a guy that about 5 years ago, rankings-wise, it was looking like he was ready to be a breakthrough player. Disappeared for a couple of years, not sure what happened, but his rankings have now started going back in that direction where it was a few years ago. That's why I think it's possible that he could have a breakthrough year this year.
Yeah, I consider Putnam, like you said, the course history is awesome here. My only concern is the 4th place finish at Sony last week was like all with the putter. He actually lost strokes off the tee and on approach. But you look at the numbers, Putnam is one of the best putters on tours. Like you kind of can bank on him gaining putting, which you're going to need to do to win here. Again, you're going to have to make a lot of birdies. So if he can have a better ball striking week, which he had, his previous few events back in the fall, he had been gaining at least on approach. So if he can bounce back there, I definitely think he could be in the mix.
Okay. Then we've got some other players of note because these are important because we're getting to the guys that usually win here. By the way, Justin Rose is 70-1. Pendrith is also 70-1. We'll see if Rose, like Jason Day, could have a comeback. He has played well here before. Hasn't played here a whole lot recently, but he does have a good history, Rose, here. McCarthy is 80-1 around there. He was 6th last year, his best finish in 5 attempts. But a couple other players at 80-1 to mention. One of them is Will Gordon. And Will Gordon is my 3rd choice. And I think I'm getting him at around 100-1, actually. So he's actually gone the other way. I don't know why. Anyway, but he was 615th in the world in June. And now he's 124th. That's because he's made 13 straight cuts, including in 3 KFT events, all top 5s and a win. He's had 8 top 45s and 8 PGA Tour events with the 3rd at Mayakoba. He was 28th last week. Played here a couple of years ago. Nothing spectacular, but he made the cut. 1 under par. And he did win the KFT event in August. So this is a guy to keep an eye on. And this might be one of those guys that really makes a lot of sense here. He ranks 124th in the world. Yeah,
it could definitely be a breakthrough type that we see win here. I bet Will Gordon quite a few times last season. He's a really good driver of the golf ball. That's where kind of he's going to make his money. And if he can get hot with the putter here, he could definitely have a chance.
K.H. Lee is another guy whose odds have actually dropped to about 65-1. That's where you got him at. He's your 4th choice. Why do you like K.H. Lee this week?
I just think he's a better player than 65-1 in this field. He's won each of the last 2 years, won the Byron Nelson each of the last 2 years. Comes into this one in good form, 7th at the Century 2 weeks ago, 28th at Sony last week. Above average, short and long term in both strokes gained approach and opportunities gained. And Lee as well, I like him on easy courses. He's 10th in this field in strokes gained total on easy courses. So he likes these low scoring affairs. That's what the Byron Nelson is. I think he won at minus 25 and minus 26, I believe, were his winning scores in those 2 events. So this is the type of event I like to bet on KH Lee.
Again, he hasn't played, I think, since has he missed action since mid-November, I think?
Nope, he played both.
He did. Okay.
Both Hawaii events.
That's Wyndham Clark then.
Yes.
Wyndham Clark hasn't played since mid-November. So KH Lee, and again, last week, where was he?
28th at the Sony,
that's pretty
7th
good.
At the Century. Yep.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that all right, so when we're going over the one and dones and you're deciding on, okay, a player is good at it. So you have to decide sometimes, like let's say we were doing it last year. Well, okay, and let's say I'm just using, I don't even have to use it last year. Let's just say you got a player who's coming off a win the previous year and you have his resume seems like he's better at 3 other events. Maybe he's even trending well at those events. and you're like, all right, well, he ain't going to win consecutive events, is he? So why don't I take him at the events that maybe he's trending a little bit better at?
Yeah.
But how would you weigh that? Would you look at someone that, hey man, he's not only won there once, but he's won there twice. That's definitely the place I'm taking him at. Or do you say, well, look, I mean, trying to win a second straight time, or a third time in 4 years, or whatever the case may be, that's just asking for too much. Again, keeping in mind that we know we're not always looking for wins. It's important to try to get guys that get to finish in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably honestly be less likely to use Lee like at the Byron Nelson, just because I think more people will use him because he's won there twice.
That's another reason. Okay.
I'd rather use him at a similar event, a similar course setup, a similar style where the score, like this week, where the score is going to be, minus 25 or whatever to win. I'd rather use him in a similar event where he's going to be lower owned than going back to him at the Byron Nelson.
So if you were going to use him, you would rather take him this week than at what was this, Byron Nelson that he's won twice? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Ricky Fowler is also 80-1. Another player that will be interesting to see if he can get back, his game and all that. And he's played well on the West Coast. So but there's no way you're taking Ricky Fowler. I don't think there's any reason to take him in any way, shape, or form until he at least shows in calendar year 2023 that he's got his game going, which ended pretty well last year.
I was going to say, I'm just looking at his results from the fall, and he had a sixth at the Fortinet, second at the Zozo. So maybe he's trending back into form, but he's a guy I need to see more to be betting on Ricky Fowler. It's been a while for him.
Dietrich is also playing here for the first time, and we've talked about him on the fantasy show, player to keep an eye on. Let's say now we go to the long shots. Damon is 90-1. I think he's interesting because of the fact that he ended his 2022 year with 6 straight top 40s and 3 straight top 10s. But he missed a cut here a couple of years ago in his only appearance. I'm not sure I worry too much about that. But he also hasn't played since mid-November. So there are a couple of things that I'm a little bit concerned with. But I wouldn't be like I wouldn't criticize anybody for taking Damon.
No, me either. I think he makes sense. It's a pretty good number for him too.
All right, now let's go with our long shots here. And just based on the odds, the lowest guy is your guy from last week, which I've jumped on this week to pick him at number 4, and that's Lipsky. And I just figured, why not? Because not only did he play well last week, but he was 14th here last year. So he's played well on the course. He's coming off his best PGA Tour finish. The only question is does he have it yet in his game to be consistent?
Yeah, I love Lipsky. This is like a mental block for me where I bet him I think I got him at 150 last week in a weaker field. So it's tough for me to pull the trigger on him at, what is he, 90 or 100-1 in a stronger field. But I like the guy. I do think he has it in him, and I think he will win on the PGA Tour at some point.
All right. Next up, then, just going by our odds, would be Benny On at 130-1. That is my 6th choice. And again, most of these guys, I'm sure Jared's the same thing. It's about this event. It's about looking for long shots. Yeah. But Benny On, 8th here a couple of years ago, and he was 12th last week. He also finished 4th in September in an event in September. So this is a player that at one time was someone to watch. He kind of disappeared for a while, but he does have 4 pro wins, including the BMW PGA back in 2015 over in Europe. So second life for Benny On. We'll see whether or not he can keep going after a strong finish last week.
Benny On was one of my favorite players to bet on when I first started doing this like 4 or 5 years ago. He disappeared. I don't even know where he was last year. Was he on the Corn Ferry Tour, it looks like?
I would think so, yes, because he did disappear. Yes.
He is the ultimate ball striker who can't putt. So you just got to hope you find one of those hot putting weeks from him.
Okay, that again right there, that is at 130-1. We have him. Now we're going to go to a couple of guys, long shots that you took at 150-1. We've got Callum Tarran and Alex Smalley, both at 150-1. And Tarran missed a cut here last year, but he is trending in the right direction to end the season last year. Including a runner-up. Was that the runner-up for Tarran at the RSM?
Yes, correct.
And he's ranked at 158, right around where you want to Take him.
There you go.
And Smalley, 25th here last year, so a better job than Taryn here last year at 12 under par. Did miss the cut last week, but again, statistically, trends say it does not matter. And he ended 22 very strong, 5th, 4th, and 11th.
Yeah, with Taryn, I mean, you want to talk about volatility. So you look at his last 13 events, he has 6 missed cuts, but he's top 27 or better in the other 7, including 3 top 7s. So, the guy's either out of it or he's going to be in the mix. Like you said, second last time out at the RSM. Taryn is also 8th in this field in strokes gain approach over the last 6 months. So he has been good with his irons, which, again, I think you're going to need this week. So I like him at 150. And Smalley, like you said, missed cut last week, but closed the fall swing strong. 11th in Bermuda, 4th at Houston Open, 5th at the RSM. Had 4 top 6 finishes overall last year. So he is a guy that he was in the mix a few Sundays last season. Young player, up and comer. I think Smalley's a guy who could get a win at some point this season. So I'll take my chances on him at 150 to 1.
And at 200 to 1, you have Naismith. So what was the deal there? Why did you go with Naismith as your super long shot at 200 to 1?
Yeah, another one of my favorites because he's an awesome iron player. Over the last 2 years in this field, 3rd in strokes gain approach, 8th over the last 12 months. Now long term, he's been a bad putter, which is what has held him back. But he's actually gained strokes putting in 6 of his last 7 events now. And he's come top 9 in 3 of those events. So if he can just be a decent putter with his ball striking and ability with his irons, Naismith's definitely a guy I'll take shots on at 200 to 1.
Fits the bill as far as this the trending for this week's particular event. And then 250 to 1 for me. I'm going back to Grayson Sigg again. Why not? Last week, he didn't really disappoint too poorly. He was okay. He was hung around, made the cut. And Eckroat. We've talked about Eckroat on our fantasy show. Jan pinpointed a handful of rookies, and Eckroat was one of them. He'll be playing here for the first time. Sig was 25th last year. But Eckroat was runner-up twice on the KFT Tour last year. 12th last week. He's at 197 ranking, so that fits. And this is a kid who won the 2018 NCAA Championship on the same team as Victor Hovland and Matthew Wolff. So maybe it's Eckroat's year. Keep an eye on him. What about those two guys?
Yeah, 12th at Sony last week for Eckroat, and he gained in every stat category, off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting. So really encouraging performance. I like that one. It's a good bet.
All right. And then just wrapping up, let's who else as far as especially some of the long shots? I'll just throw out some names that I just had on my mind. Let's see. S.H. Kim, he's at 150 to 1-ish. Hodges was 3rd last year in his only appearance. So is he a horse for the course guy? I guess we'll find out this week. He's at 184. Luke List is at 180. And Hall's another one of those rookies that Jan mentioned at 300 to 1 in that range. But what about you? Anybody else? Any other long shots or just anyone in general?
Yeah, I considered Harry Hall. I considered Lucas Glover too. He was 300 to 1 last I looked. The numbers I ran for this just liked him, so I gave him a look. Didn't end up getting there. And then I did consider betting JT Poston again. I was on him last week. Had a decent week in Hawaii, and he was 90 to 1 last I looked. If that's still out there, I think that's a good number. I might end up adding him to the card.
I would have thought he'd be more like 60, 70 to 1.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, 21st actually in both the Hawaii events. So he's playing pretty well. And what's his course history here? He came 25th here last year. Has a 7th place here back in 2019. So I think Poston makes sense if you can still get him at 90.
All right, sounds good. By the way, Harris English has never missed a cut here. He's 7 for 7 with 2 top 20s, but he has still lost his game. It's surprising. It looked like he had finally reached the point in his career where he was going to live out his, when he was young, he was going to be like one of these top players to watch. Didn't materialize. Then, what was it? A year and a half ago, he was just playing. He was one of those guys that was top 20. I don't even remember what his ranking was, but it had to be around that range. And then he just completely fell off the planet. I'm not sure what happened to him. Maybe he changed golf equipment or changed his golf swing because he felt he had to do something to get even better. Who knows?
He at least gained strokes on approach last week. He had a bad putting week, so maybe that's something encouraging going forward. But I need to see more out of English before considering him.
By the way, any word yet on whether or not Berger? Because I think I've heard he's supposed to return in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard anything on him. I hope you're right. I'd like to see him back and healthy.
Let's see.
I'm looking him up now.
Let me take a look at English. Yeah, English was 13th in the world in 2021. And now he's 65. So It's been a really slow descent.
It happens quick. I mean, it doesn't take long.
No. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, yeah, hopefully Berger will come back. Is he the last player that we're waiting, the last top player with injury that we're waiting to get back?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Besides Tiger.
Yep.
No word on when Tiger's coming back?
I haven't heard him officially commit to anything. I'm sure I'm guessing he'll play at least once before the Masters, right?
He's a West Coast guy, you would think. Yep. These are his courses.
Maybe Riviera.
That's it. That's a good one. All right, Jared. Good job as always. What's next week?
Next week is good question. Pebble Beach.
Is Pebble next week?
I don't know. Phoenix is
Farmers
Super Bowl
Insurance.
Week. Oh, Torrey, nice.
By the way, Farmers Insurance, I have them starting on Wednesday. I'm assuming they're going to close up on Saturday because of the championship Sunday in the NFL.
Oh. Haven't they done that before? I think they've done that before.
I don't remember, but that would make sense. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, so that's a Wednesday again, I'm just guessing, but it says they're starting Wednesday. Yep. So with the championship game on Sunday, that does make a lot of sense. Yep. And by the way, Abu Dhabi this week in Europe. So you have a good field there. Nothing great, but a decent field. Mm-hmm. I think some of the top guys are like Fleetwood and Hatton and Lowry and guys like that. Minwoo Lee's been really hot, but no blockbuster names. Seamus Power went over there.
Yeah.
And then next week is also the Dubai Desert Classic. So they're starting to tune things up again over in Europe, which means you'll probably start seeing next week. I would suspect you're going to see some good players, maybe even a Rory McIlroy. I don't know. I don't know what their schedules are like, but next week, that's when things get a lot better because Farmers Insurance is a good event. So
I love Torrey, and then Riviera is my favorite course on tour.
Is that usually back to back?
Yeah, it is, but I think they put because they wanted to keep the waste management on the same weekend as the Super Bowl. So I'm looking right now. It goes Farmers Insurance, then Pebble Beach, then waste management, and then the Genesis.
Okay.
I think they flipped some of that around. I think to keep waste management on Super Bowl weekend.
Well, you got to do that.
Got to do that.
That's always a cool kind of deal.
And the Super Bowl is in Phoenix this year, so they'll have both events within. I don't know how close they are, but they're close.
That should make it even that much more interesting. Yeah, they gotta start tee times on that final round on Sunday. They're a little earlier though.
Yeah, it always runs up right against kickoff.
They had the playoff last year.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a little. Come on now. Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's next week. Again, we'll talk about the Wednesday Farmers Insurance. So we'll do our show like we are doing. We're recording the show now early afternoon on Tuesday. So the earlier we record it, the better for next week's show as well. And Jared, again, appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Good luck this week.